Welcome to American Railroad number 31, the DVD program for everyone interested in North American railways. In this program, we travel to the Buckeye State of Ohio as we sample 3 railroad hotspots. We begin with a look at the selection of rail traffic through Berea, close to the city of Cleveland. The diamond crossings at Marion, to the north of the state capital Columbus, are our next location. Our landside interlude takes us to Defiance, where this veteran machine features on the Napoleon, Defiance and Western Railroad. A look at trains through the famous Iron Triangle at the popular location of Fostoria. And our closing scene comes from the rail park at Deshler. Our first section comes from the township of Berea, just southwest of the city of Cleveland, not far from the shores of Lake Erie. The location is where the current-day Norfolk Southern and CSX main lines come together for a short distance on routes heading west towards Chicago. As a result, traffic levels are high, and so it is a popular location for rail fans from far and wide. Our maps show the 2 lines concerned, where they run close together for a short distance of no more than half a mile or so. We chose our camera positions on the south side of the tracks, which sees good light for most of the day. The town itself has a population of around 20,000 and is home to the Baldwin Wallace University, as well as a training ground for the Cleveland Browns football team. We'll see further reference to this a little later on in this section. The date is the 21st of March 2022, a Monday, and rolling into view on point is one of Norfolk Southern's newest acquisitions, number 1228, one of 10 EMD SD70 Aces, built in 2019 and recently purchased from Progress Rail Leasing. Given its recent purchase by NS, we suspect that this may well have been its first revenue-earning duty. the train stopped for a crew change, which lasted well over 30 minutes. The Norfolk Southern line, the one the train is on, is the former Lake Shore and Michigan Southern, which continued on to Chicago. Standing between the tracks is the now closed Berea East, ex-New York Central interlocking tower built in 1929. The two tracks closest to the camera belong to the CSX. These were once part of the Cleveland, Cincinnati, Chicago and St. Louis Railway, also known as the Big Four. The two lines subsequently became part of the New York Central and then Conrail, before its disbanding and carving up by both Norfolk Southern and CSX when they purchased the company back in 1999. We'll show you a glimpse of the old Berea station, which still stands but is now a restaurant, a little later on in this section. But for now, we'll give you some background. During the heyday of the New York Central Railroad, the station played host to such trains as the 20th Century Limited, Southwestern Limited, Commodore Vanderbilt, Knickerbocker, Lakeshore Limited, Mercury, New England States, Ohio State Limited, and the Pacemaker, which all rolled through this location. Today it is just a handful of Amtrak services which pass the building and which mainly run at night. The two tracks to the left continue on to Greenwich, where the Big Four joined and crossed the Baltimore and Ohio. This was a single track line and only had a modest level of traffic. The busiest line was the current NS route to Chicago. A year before Conrail was carved up, it added an extra track on the Greenwich line, and today CSX greatly benefit from that decision, with around 35 to 40 trains a day using the route. We'll visit Greenwich in a future edition of this series. The sheer length of the freight train seen here can be appreciated in our opening sequence. The next train to show is headed by Norfolk Southern's 9433 and foreign power in the shape of BNSF's 6534. The NS loco is a -9C44W, built in March 2000, and the BNSF machine is a similar ES44C4 dating from 2013. This is a unit grain train, featuring standard gravity-fed discharge wagons, a typical consist seen on this route, with a ubiquitous string of cars in tow. But one car to look out for is a green liveried one, which once belonged to the now fallen flag Chicago and Northwestern Railroad. The railcar in question is not that rare, and is now probably owned by a separate private leasing company. But it is worth pointing out as it doesn't have many more years of service left. And there it is. This eastbound CSX stack train has a pair of AC44 CWs, numbers 101 and 78, leading SD40-3, number 4015. It's quite common to see lesser powered and older locos at work on CSX's trains, such as the SD40, which all adds to the variety that is typically seen. You can see the former Berea station buildings on the far right of this picture. We mentioned that the Cleveland Browns football team have their training ground in these parts. Well, this is further emphasised by the branding on one of the town's water towers. The team was named after their original coach and co-founder Paul Brown, and currently compete in the American Football Conference North Division. They were established on the 4th of June 1944. Another eastbound CSX grabs our attention with 5431, an ES40DC and AC4400 CW number 369 on point. Like previous trains, we'll let this one roll by, so as to give you the full experience of just how long these workings are. In the late 1800s, John Baldwin developed a local industry turning the sandstone banks of the nearby Rocky River into grindstones that became world famous. Local sandstone was also used in the construction of the 1876 Berea Union Station, which we can see here beyond the hedge. As already mentioned, it is a popular restaurant, and local rail fans are warmly welcomed and free to use their parking lot, which runs right up to the tracks. You can see around 3 to 4 freight trains through here each hour, and any day can be busy. However, we were a little unlucky, in that no trains turned up for a 2-hour period, and the only movement we saw was this high rail on a track inspection move, which may well have been why trains were halted, as this safety critical work was completed. A lucky encounter with a westbound local was next. Originally completed as a GP50 back in October 1980, number 5812 was rebuilt and outshopped in August 2005 as a GP38-3. It is currently one of 31 operational locomotives of this type on Norfolk Southern's roster. Our final view from Berea is of another CSX manifest, this time with 176 cars making up the train. Locos involved are 3156 leading, with 3001 acting as mid-train helper. Another wagon of note in the consist is an ex-Wisconsin Central boxcar. Although not rare, it represents another fallen flag railroad, with the Wisconsin Company being purchased by and incorporated into the Canadian National Railways back in 2001. 106 miles to the southwest of Berea lies the junction town of Marion, and it is here that we are off to next. Located north of the state capital Columbus, a number of important rail routes meet here that are now operated by Class 1 railroads, CSX and Norfolk Southern. The town has long been regarded as one of the best train watching locations in the state, and so is a definite inclusion in this hotspot programme. As usual, our maps show our filming locations and the various positions used in and around the flat crossings situated to the west of downtown Marion. The CSX tracks marked on our map are the Mount Victory subdivision running from east to west. On the left, the CSX Columbus subdivision operating north to south, and the parallel Norfolk Southern Sandusky division linking Bellevue with Columbus. The date is the 21st of March 2022. Our first train is a Norfolk Southern set of oil cans heading north, past the parking lots, powered by number 9610, a -944CW dating from 2001. Our viewing point is the preserved Marion Union Station, now in the custody and safe hands of the Station Association. Heading north on the CSX Columbus sub are 5475 and 7235. The Columbus sub was once the Chesapeake and Ohio, connecting Toledo with Columbus and down to Ashland on the Kentucky border. Historically, it was mainly coal that was shipped north to Toledo. Today, coal is carried much less, and auto rack and merchandise traffic dominates. The line isn't that busy and sees around 15 trains per day. The Norfolk Southern has a small yard to the north of the crossing and interchanges traffic with the CSX by way of this northeast Y. Power on this occasion is provided by SD40-2, number 3320. Traffic on the NS Sandusky route is a mix of unit coal, oil, container and general merchandise. Hauling a long loaded coal train north, we have 3642 and 4153 with 8158 and 8080 as distributed power. This is a long train and is typical of current day operations. To the left, the Marion Union Station Association rescued and restored the former Atlantic Crossing Tower, which once controlled the crossings here. The name of the crossing is a throwback to the days when the Erie, which came through here, was known as the Atlantic and Great Western and Chicago and Atlantic. The tower was originally located to the north side of the tracks and much taller than it is today. The Marion Union Station Association bought the tower from Conrail and hired a crane to lift it and swing it across the tracks to its current location next to the caboose. The inside of the tower looks much as it did when it was still in operation. The model board, interlocking machine, operator's desk and telephones are all in place. This former Pennsylvania route between Columbus and Sandusky, upon which the coal train is running, was sold to Norfolk and Western in the 1960s and subsequently became part of Conrail. Today the NS Sandusky district is part of the Heartland Corridor, a conduit for freight between the Midwest and the Southeast. Note some of the brown Conrail liveried hoppers in the train's consist. And if you are counting, there's 225 hoppers in this train. The young lads here are on the lookout for any more locomotives added to the rear of the train. .3320 had dropped off its cut of wagons onto the CSX tracks to the east. Its next job was to take some cars to local industries situated to the south of town. Number 3320 is a 1979 vintage loco, originally procured by the Southern Railway for its Central Georgia Railroad. It has been rebuilt with an Admiral cab and low short hood. Running on the old Erie Road is a seriously long auto-rack train headed by 3306 with 3399 as DPU. Will save you the agony of watching a uniform rake of auto racks go by, as life's too short. If you're interested, we stayed awake long enough to count the 110 auto racks making up the consist. The east-west route, crossing from left to right, is an amalgamation of the once New York Central and Erie. The New York Central was the Big Four route between Cleveland and St. Louis via Indianapolis. The Erie came west from Akron and met the Big Four at Burt Tower in Galion, around 20 miles to the east. At Marion, the Erie divided into two routes. The busier route continued west to Chicago, while a branch went to Dayton. The Dayton line was the original Erie route through Marion, although when it opened in 1864 it was known as the Atlantic and Great Western. Railroad entrepreneur J. Gould leased the A&GW in the late 1860s as part of an effort to expand the Erie to Chicago. Gould then formed the Atlantic and Chicago to build it between Marion and Chicago. The Erie eventually became the Erie-Lackawanna, and the New York Central became Penn Central. Both were incorporated into Conrail in April 1976. A train horn was heard, and a quick sprint over to the western CSX tracks of the Columbus sub saw us get in position to capture this southbound grain train, with 5465 and 5448 on point. Of interest is a number of ex-CP rail liveried cylindrical hoppers, now on their way out of traffic. They wear the black, white and red multi-mark livery, often known as Pac-Man. Here's one coming up now. An AC4400 CW and an ES44AH power this northbound coal train on this CSX Columbus sub. It is overtaken by a northbound stack train on the parallel Norfolk Southern Sandusky division. Train Q217, which is seen here, runs from Greenwich Yard in Philadelphia to Osborne Yard, Louisville, and heads west behind 5114, a CW44AH, dating from 2002. It is also paired with 3121, which is a ES44AH, which was constructed in 2013. Both locos being built by General Electric. The town of Marion was first dated from 1822 and was named in honour of General Francis Marion. The town has been a hive of industry over the years, manufacturing anything from heavy earth-moving equipment to the current home of Whirlpool, the world's biggest clothes dryer producer. It is also home to various food companies, due to its proximity to nearby growing regions. Completely catching us out was number 3320 again, pushing a cut of cars south, destined for local industry. There's plenty of engine noise from this 43-year-old veteran. Three Norfolk Southern and a Union Pacific loco make up this quartet as they head north. It is possible to see between 50 and 70 trains through here each day. On the right of the picture, the Marion Station Association was donated an original Erie and Lackawanna caboose, number C306. A local tank car company repainted it into original colours, free of charge. The Norfolk Southern line is single track to the north and south, with a long twin track loop through the town and past our filming location. Dispatchers often allow two trains to pass here if traffic levels dictate. The same is true for the east to west CSX line, which is again single track either side of town. The third CSX Columbus sub is also single track to the north and to the south. Well, that's nearly it from Marion. We just had enough light to film the local heading back north before we headed off to our next day's filming at Fostoria. We have a brief interlude now as we travel northwest of our current location and to the Defiance-based short line, the Napoleon, Defiance and Western Railroad. Defiance is positioned in the northwest corner of Ohio, around 55 miles southwest of Toledo. The line's yard is situated on the southern edge of the town, below the Maumee River. Continuous rain hampered our effort to film the short line's operations, and we were restricted to our early morning film of this Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe GP20 U locomotive, now owned by Pioneer Rail Corporation. The unit dates from September 1961 and still carries its Santa Fe livery as well as its BNSF running number. This superb loco is seen at work spotting cars in the yard at Defiance on the 23rd of March 2022. It is one of two examples of this type working on the railroad. With the first light of day now falling on the tracks, the loco spots a line of cars ready for positioning later in the day. The crew were real friendly and couldn't be more helpful. Unfortunately, the morning was going to be fairly quiet as far as train movements were concerned, with just a ballast drop scheduled for the Napoleon area, and that was the only train in operation for another 4 hours. For us, the rain was relentless, and so with much regret we decided to move on, but not without watching the GP20 finishing its work. With Berea, Marion and Defiance behind us, it is time to move on, and this time we are at the Iron Triangle in downtown Fostoria, another rail fanning paradise. Located 50 miles or so to the south of Toledo, this is another railroad hotspot not to be missed. Norfolk Southern and CSX main lines cross each other here, and the action is almost constant. The maps show the town's location as well as our filming positions in and around the purpose-built rail fan shelter in the northeast corner of the triangle of lines. First up, and it's the turn of CSX, with this eastbound intermodal led by number 563 on point with number 3331 for company. You might notice that the ground signal on the bottom left of the picture is showing a green aspect, indicating a westbound working is signalled off the Y from the Toledo direction. The city of Fostoria was named after Charles Foster and came into being in 1854 when two nearby villages, Rome and Risdon, came together as one. That same year the first railroad arrived in town, when the Fremont and Indiana began laying tracks through here between Fremont and eventually onwards towards Indiana. It was another 18 years before the next railroad completed its tracks, namely the Chesapeake and Ohio, which went south to north between Columbus and Toledo. Today this route is the CSX Columbus sub, which we sampled when we were at Marion. The tracks that the stack train is on were originally laid in 1877 by the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad as part of its route from the east and onwards towards Chicago. Two more railroads would also come to town, the New York, Chicago and St. Louis, better known as the Nickel Plate, and the New York Central, also known as the Atlantic and Lake Erie. It's easy to see why Fostoria was and still is a major junction for railroads in this part of the state. The area of land between the tracks is formed into a triangle, hence the name. The green light was for this train to head south before turning west on the Y towards Chicago. Steel slab made up most of the traffic. We think the train was number B522, from AK Steel Dearborn Works in Michigan to their Middletown Works in Ohio. This is a daily working. Coming off the old B&O and heading north onto the former C&O, we have AC 4400 CW number 138. The loco was constructed by General Electric in the summer of 1996. With horns giving the mandatory warnings to road users, the train is about to cross over the Norfolk Southern main line, which itself sees around 20 movements each day, including locals. The ex-C&O north of here, which the train is running on, will typically see 12 to 18 trains per day. Within a few minutes we caught Norfolk Southern's train 218 from Calumet Yard, Chicago, to Satellite Yard in Charlotte, North Carolina. Power was a pair of SD70 Aces, numbers 1148 and 1030, dating from 2014 and 2011 respectively. A pair of SD40-3s in the shape of 4225 and 4017 are pulling a long rake of cars out of a nearby industrial spur. The rail park here is part museum and heritage centre and part viewing platform. There's plenty of parking, including for RVs, as well as a radio tuned into the local railroad frequencies. Tables, toilets and barbecue facilities are also provided, making it a pleasant location to watch the trains go by. Close on 80 trains pass this location each day. Train I-150 approaches the camera behind 5486 and number 26. The stack train operates from North Baltimore Yard, Ohio, to Detroit in Michigan. In between the rain, we had chance for a quick walk around the rail park. The wind was quite strong and made filming tricky. The 40-foot long ex-B&O caboose, built in 1965, was purchased for the park and placed on a section of track in the spring of 2017. It cost around $1,500 at auction and was previously located in Alvada, Ohio. A nice surprise was KCS's 4199, leading Union Pacific 9041, and CSX 5345 and 470. We believe this was train I-151 from Detroit to North Baltimore. Slightly to the west of the park, the CSX and Norfolk Southern lines cross each other on a diamond. Heading an eastbound stack are 816 and 3048. Number 970 is the distributed power. We finished the programme with a taster of another Ohio hotspot, Deshler. Located around 20 miles west of Fostoria, this is also a popular train watching location and features another purpose-built railfan park. Our filming position is just west of the Diamonds. Two local railfans move across the park to view an eastbound set of coal empties, powered by a pair of ES44AHs, numbers 3075 and 839. We hope that you have enjoyed this edition of American Railroad.